I used to think peace meant perfection, the quiet breakfasts, the matching smiles for the cameras, the polished image of the billionaire couple everyone admired. From the outside, our life looked like something out of a glossy magazine spread, but inside those marble walls, silence wasn't peace. It was distance, the kind that grows so slowly you don't notice until you can't remember the last time you felt seen. When we first married, he used to touch my hand in public just to make sure I was near. Now, even when we sat inches apart at dinner, I could feel a whole ocean between us. Conversations turned into polite exchanges, kisses into obligations, and I learned to read his moods like weather forecasts. Predictable, but still capable of ruining my day. People say love fades. I don't think it fades. I think it shifts into power, guilt, resentment. For us, it became a quiet war fought with glances and unspoken words. He wanted a child more than anything. I wanted one too. But month after month, doctor after doctor, hope turned into humiliation. The pressure from his family didn't help. They saw me as a mistake, beautiful enough for the spotlight, but not enough to carry on the name. He started working late, traveling more. At least that's what he said. I stopped asking questions I already knew the answers to. Sometimes I'd catch a faint trace of perfume that wasn't mine on his jacket, or a lipstick stain too subtle to be an accident. I'd just fold the jacket, hang it neatly, and pretend I didn't see, not because I was weak, but because I was waiting. The night he told me we were attending a charity dinner, his tone was too careful. He said it like a man rehearsing kindness. "It'll be good for appearances," he said. I smiled and agreed, even though something in my gut twisted. I knew that night would be different. Not because of what I'd find out, but because of what I'd finally decide to do. Looking back now, that dinner wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the end of pretending. The calm before the storm I was already ready to walk through. The morning of the dinner, I woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight was spilling across the white sheets, and for a moment I let myself pretend that everything was normal, that the man lying next to me wasn't a stranger wearing my husband's face. He murmured something about meetings, kissed the top of my head out of habit, and left before I could say a word. The house felt too quiet after he was gone. I made coffee, stared at the steam curling from the mug, and thought about the woman who had called 2 days earlier. His assistant. She mentioned casually that Miss Evelyn would also be at the charity dinner tonight. I didn't react, but my chest tightened. Evelyn. The woman he was with before me. The one his mother used to say was a better match. I'd seen her in magazines. Perfect skin, perfect smile, perfect life. I knew then that this wasn't just a dinner. It was a test. Maybe even a performance. And I wasn't going to let anyone write my part for me. I spent the afternoon getting ready, not out of vanity but strategy. I didn't wear the bright gown he once bought me for events like this. Instead, I chose a sleek black dress, simple, elegant, silent power. My hair was pinned back, my makeup soft but deliberate. I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You are not their victim." When he came home, his eyes flickered with something I couldn't name, maybe surprise, maybe guilt. "You look beautiful," he said, adjusting his cufflinks without meeting my eyes. On the drive there, I watched the city lights blur through the window and thought about all the ways I had learned to survive in silence. Black women are often told to be strong, to endure, to carry grace, even when it burns. But strength, I realized, isn't about not breaking. It's about choosing when to bend and when to rise. As we pulled up to the restaurant, I felt the weight of every whisper waiting inside. The valet opened my door, cameras flashed, and I stepped out with a calm I didn't feel. I didn't know exactly what was coming, but I knew I was ready for it. The moment we walked into that restaurant, I could feel eyes on us. The kind of eyes that didn't just look, they measured. Every table shimmered with crystal glasses and soft golden light, the air thick with money, perfume, and gossip. I'd been in rooms like this before, but tonight felt different. The laughter seemed louder, the stares lingered longer, and every whisper sounded like my name. The maitre d' led us to a long table near the center, where the city's wealthiest gathered to raise funds for causes they barely remembered in the morning. My husband smiled his practiced smile, shaking hands, greeting people who adored him for his charm and his money. I followed, my hand resting lightly on his arm, my face composed into the same flawless calm I'd perfected over the years. Then I saw her, Evelyn. Draped in a silver gown that caught every glimmer of light, she stood at the far end of the table, talking to one of the board members. When her eyes met mine, she smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that wasn't friendly. She turned toward my husband, and his face changed. That flicker of guilt I'd seen earlier returned, followed by something worse, fondness. She greeted him like no time had passed. "You look good," she said, touching his shoulder lightly. He didn't pull away. "You too," he replied, his voice lower than usual. Then she turned to me, pretending politeness. "You must be his wife." "I've heard so much about you," I smiled. "I'm sure you have." Dinner began, and for a while I managed to tune out the tension, focusing on the meaningless chatter about business expansions and charity auctions. But as the wine flowed, so did the boldness. Evelyn leaned closer, her hand brushing his arm again. Her laughter was too loud, her compliments too pointed. The others at the table watched, pretending not to. I sat quietly, my pulse steady but my stomach tightening. Then it happened. The conversation turned to family, and someone joked about children inheriting their father's empire. Evelyn tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "Well," she said sweetly, "if he ever wants a child, I'd be happy to help." The table fell silent. Forks froze mid-air. My husband chuckled awkwardly, but he didn't deny it. He didn't even look at me, just sipped his wine like the comment meant nothing. The humiliation hit me like a wave, hot, sharp, and suffocating. Every face around that table was watching to see what I'd do. Cry, yell, walk out? Instead, I smiled, slowly, calmly. "That's kind of you," I said, my voice soft but steady, "but I believe he already has all the help he needs." The silence deepened. Evelyn's smile faltered. My husband finally looked at me, confusion flickering across his face, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of emotion. I lifted my glass, took a sip, and met his eyes. That calm was my armor, and he didn't even realize it was the beginning of his end. When we got home that night, he tried to speak first. "You overreacted," he said, loosening his tie, his tone half annoyed, half defensive. I took off my earrings one by one and placed them on the vanity before answering. "Did I?" My voice was calm, too calm. He didn't realize yet that calm can be louder than shouting. He kept pacing, muttering something about how the press would spin things, how he'd have to call the PR team in the morning. His world was already shrinking, and he didn't even know it. I watched him from the mirror. The same man who once promised to protect me was now worried about protecting his image. The irony almost made me laugh. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw accusations. I simply said, "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be different." He didn't ask what I meant. Maybe part of him knew. When he fell asleep, I walked to my study, the one room he rarely entered. On the desk were the documents I had signed weeks ago, the ones that gave me majority control of his company through a quiet trust my late father had set up before our marriage. My husband had never cared to read the fine print of anything that didn't benefit him directly. He signed papers blindly, assuming I was the obedient wife who just wanted his last name. That assumption would cost him everything. I spent months preparing for this moment, not out of revenge, but out of survival. Every whisper of betrayal, every cold silence, every public humiliation had been a lesson. I learned to move quietly, to observe patterns, to build exits disguised as gestures of love. I learned that real power doesn't roar. It whispers. By sunrise, I had sent one email to our board of directors, triggering the clause that transferred his voting rights to me due to conduct unbecoming of a chief executive. It was legal. It was airtight, and it was poetic. While he slept beside me, dreaming he was untouchable, his empire was already shifting beneath him. When he woke up, I was dressed, composed, and ready to leave. He blinked at me, confused. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Somewhere peaceful," I said. "You should check your phone." As I closed the front door behind me, I could hear the faint vibration of his phone buzzing again and again. Calls from investors, lawyers, reporters. I didn't look back. That night at the dinner, everyone expected me to break. Instead, I prepared the quietest storm they'd ever seen. Because sometimes revenge isn't fire, it's calm, it's silence, it's walking away from the chaos you could have burned and letting them realize, far too late, that you were the one who held all the matches. By the next morning, the world already knew. His name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Someone at that dinner had recorded the moment Evelyn offered him a child, and the clip had gone viral overnight. It was everywhere, on news blogs, on social media, even in the business journals that once praised him. Billionaire humiliates wife in public, then loses control of his company. That headline followed him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. I watched the chaos unfold from a quiet hotel suite across the city. My phone buzzed endlessly. Calls from journalists, messages from so-called friends pretending to be concerned. I ignored them all. The only sound I wanted to hear was the ocean outside my window. For the first time in years, I could breathe. He, on the other hand, was drowning. Within hours, the board called an emergency meeting. The investors who had once worshipped him were now demanding answers, terrified of losing money. When the documents I'd sent came to light, confirming that I held controlling shares through my father's trust, panic rippled through the ranks. His lawyers called me, their tone frantic but polite. "Perhaps we can find a compromise," they said. I almost smiled. "There's nothing to compromise," I replied. "It's already done." He tried to call me. Dozens of times. Each voicemail sounded more desperate than the last. The arrogance in his voice cracked, replaced by confusion, then fear. "You can't do this to me," he said in one. "We can fix this." But there was no we left to fix. I had been invisible for too long, sitting beside him as he built an empire with my silence as the foundation. Now the silence was gone, and so was the empire. Evelyn tried to save herself, of course. She released a statement claiming she was misunderstood, that the dinner moment had been taken out of context. But no one believed her. Sponsors dropped her from brand deals. The same tabloids that once adored her began tearing her apart. She had built her reputation on being perfect. Now the world saw her for what she really was, an opportunist clinging to a sinking man. By the end of the week, he was forced to resign. The board replaced him, and I stepped into the role temporarily, not for power, but for closure. When I entered the building, every employee stared, unsure whether to pity me or fear me. I didn't need either. I just walked past the portraits of him hanging in the lobby, stopping briefly in front of one. "You built it on pride," I whispered. "I rebuilt it on truth." He lost everything chasing control. The company, the money, the respect. The woman he thought he owned. But the real tragedy wasn't what he lost. It was realizing that the woman he'd underestimated had been holding the empire together all along. And once she walked away, it all crumbled like dust. It's been 6 months since that night, and sometimes I still wake up wondering how I ever lived inside that silence. The world sees me differently now. Some call me the woman who took down a billionaire, others call me cold. But I don't need their labels. I know who I am. I'm free. After the chaos settled, I sold my shares, kept what I needed, and walked away from everything else. I didn't want to build another empire. I wanted to build peace. I started a foundation for women who've been silenced, humiliated, or made to believe they weren't enough. Every story I hear reminds me that power isn't about control. It's about choice. Sometimes I think about him. Not with anger, not even pity, just distance. I heard he moved out of the mansion, that he spends most of his days trying to rebuild what's left of his reputation. Maybe he'll learn that love isn't a possession. Maybe he won't. Either way, it's no longer my concern. What I've learned is that healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet mornings with coffee and no fear. Sometimes it's laughing again without guilt. Sometimes it's realizing you don't have to prove anything to anyone, not even yourself. The night he lost everything, he thought I'd ruined him. But the truth is, I just stopped saving him. I stopped shrinking so he could feel big. I stopped mistaking silence for strength. And now, when people ask how I stayed so calm that night, I tell them the truth. I wasn't calm because I didn't care. I was calm because I finally did. About myself.